So welcome everybody.
Thank you.
I thought tonight we would talk about enlightenment, and it's a subject that comes up a lot, especially on social media amongst those who like to talk about spiritual things. And as it is with many spiritual topics, there are so many definitions or ideas that people have about it that it's often difficult to communicate because you never know who means what by the term enlightenment. So I thought I would just open it up a little bit here for discussion, and let's talk about it and see what it means to you. And there's no right or wrong answer here. Just feel free to share what somebody says enlightenment, or asks you if you're enlightened. What do you say? What's your idea of what enlightenment means? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's pretty subjective at this point.
Well, that's a hard one because I really do appreciate what Father Paul said, when he said not to offer to someone something they haven't asked for. So the first thing I went to was sort of a mystical explanation of this is light being put to work as compared to it being philosophy. But that seems a little deeper than probably is going to come up in the initial conversation at Starbucks.
Yeah, right. When the barista asks you if you're enlightened, right? Or if you ask her.
Why did you have to put on your sunglasses?
So putting light to work, huh?
Yes, and Michael visited me recently, and I mentioned to you when we were together that one of the things I've come up with that I find really easy to say to somebody at any level of their spiritual study is that I speak of it as a robe, that I wear a robe of light, and as I walk around, the edges of my robe touch the robes of other people, and it is a healing source, and it affects other people. And that's sort of enough, it seems, to just go, well, okay, it doesn't sound too crazy spiritual, and I leave it at that.
I think for me, it started when the it started, I guess, with the process of unlearning stuff. That's probably what I would say. Enlightenment started for me because I guess the breaking down of other beliefs and then being replaced with stuff that are, let's say, more experiential and more I could relate to from within myself, not just kind of believing what I was told.
Eli, are you enlightened?
A little bit more now. So yeah, it's a great question, right? Because you, like you said, it just occupies so much, and people throw the word around as if we all have this common thread that we're like, oh yeah, it's like my your Florida hat. Like I got one of those, but so a couple of things. I was listening to a a, a teacher today actually talk about this very thing, but I'm not even going to mention that. So what comes to my mind is, was it Jung, or it was one of the great thinkers? But before I say the intellectual part, I think it is the most simple uh, expression. It's simply being in light, right? Just being in light, enlightened, and being more and more aware of this light, right? Not like an intellectual concept, but like a real living presence. I think that's kind of the heart of it. And And then to add to that, there's a really great saying, I know in the Kabbalah and Western tradition, it says that the unregenerated mind or unenlightened mind is one that does an intellect that does not recognize a superior intelligence. One that is just does not recognize that there is a greater intelligence within which
Yeah.
we all live and move and exist within. So I think those two things together at least kind of give a sense of how that occurs for me.
Yeah. Let me put it this way. Among the popular, or famous teachers out there, who would you regard, either living or dead, who would you regard that you would say definitely was enlightened? And why? What makes you say that they're enlightened?
You mean somebody other than the accepted teachers like Yogananda or?
No, it's people like that. People like that. Famous, acknowledged gurus, teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and why? Why would you consider them to be enlightened? What is it about them that would lead you to that conclusion?
Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers.
Ah, that's
Mr.
it.
Rogers was a minister, but he didn't talk that up a whole lot at all. But his life was about service, 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 service. He always put everyone else first. He didn't believe in a lot of the things that we talk about in these classes, but I believe within his own personal soul that he was an enlightened being.
Well, that's a good one.
I always wonder who influenced Mr. Fred Rogers. You know.
Marianne, there's a wonderful book called The Good Neighbor, written by a very close friend of his, and it does give some it does speak to what spiritual teachers he had, and then also what teachers he had when it came to childhood development and stuff like that. I've read it twice. It is a wonderful book. The Good Neighbor.
I'm not much of a big reader, but I have read Evelyn Underhill when someone recommended it in the inner awakening, was it Facebook group, or I forgot the name before they changed it, but I did grab that book and I thought she is one enlightened one based on how she really had written in that book. The name of the book is Practical Mysticism.
That was a good book, as I recall. Lyda, who's on top of your list?
Well, there are two for different reasons. One, the obvious one, Master Paul, and my father.
Wow.
Well, some people don't understand that because he's my father, but my father was the kind of man who did not talk about what he believed because he was too busy living it. And his life was service and commitment, and he was a really man who was almost 99% of the time right, even when it ticked me off. But it's because of how he lived. I mean, he had that guidance built in that led him to do the things he did and how he lived. And my husband said, my dad, one time, that the world would be a better place if more people had your dad as a father. I mean, he was a really good man.
Okay, so I'm going to try to triangulate in on this. So bear with me. I want to, touch on a couple of things here. Let's shift away from what is enlightenment to what is truth. That's another word, that gets bandied about. And usually, like on social media, if you bring it up, everybody immediately thinks they know what the word means, and they just assume that you have the same definition as they do. So we know that, you know, the word truth is like the word God. Everybody, no matter how many people there are, you'll have that number of definitions for the word, and they're all different. So what about that? What is truth? If you were to tell somebody that you were a truth seeker, or that, you know, if they asked you what's the most important thing in your life, and you said truth, what would that mean? What would you mean by that?
This is sort of out there, but what came to me was truth is that which is demonstrable. And I'm only saying that because just before this class, I wrote a review for Mark Ehrlichs of the class I just took with him about healing. And you know, the idea of what is healing, what can we do for each other, you know, was theory until I took this class. And then all of a sudden it was demonstrable. This works. So that's what came to me.
For me, truth would be the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve. As you know, as soul, as the spirit would lead us to. So it's always something that is to aspire.
Yeah, like something that, whatever it is that the spirit is leading us to, that would have to be the truth, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
I like
that's really good. I
Yeah.
do too. Because I was just, what came to my mind was when Pilate asked Jesus the exact question.
Yeah.
And he said, "What is truth?" And Jesus' response was, "I was born for this. I've come into the world for this, to give evidence about the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." And that just reminds me of what you were just saying about following the Spirit.
Michael, I think it also depends on where a person is at in their own spiritual journey. So again, back to Father Paul saying, don't give to somebody something they don't need. Truth for a lot of people is what they believe. I would think truth for those of us who are believing at the level that we are believing, truth is something that works. You can see that it works.
Yeah. Can you give well, you did give an example of healing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But the same with, say, prayer, you know, for a lot of people. For my absolute best friend, he has such a screwball idea of prayer. It's crazy, but I'm not going to confront him on it at all. You know, he is who he is. But the idea that prayer actually works and that prayer actually works is demonstrable. It absolutely is. Am I going to try to convince somebody else of that? Hell no. Hell no. Not for a second. Everyone has to get to their level when they get to their level.
Not me, man. I try to cause trouble whenever I can.
But you also said something that caused me trouble. In your book, The Five Vows, I believe it was in the chapter on purity, you mentioned to be truthful at all times in everything. And I came across that many months ago, and it really hasn't hurt me in any way, but it's made me give up little white lies. It's made me give up telling people little stories to get out of this and that, when all I had to do was tell the damn truth. And here we are. And it feels better.
There's another answer you can give if somebody is pressing you on something like that, and it's a simple answer, and it's simply, that's none of your damn business.
Yes, true.
You know, seriously. Don't make me lie to you, is what it's saying, you know. I mean, how often do we invoke that right, you know? Because nobody likes confrontation, but when somebody asks an inappropriate question, or simply asks you something you don't want to answer, because you don't know why they're asking you, you know, and so unless it's in a court of law or something, you know, that you witnessed and, you know, that you have to, you know, to testify to, who are they to ask you anything? That, and you know, you are under no obligation to
Right.
answer them. So that's a great way to avoid lying, right? So
Yeah, not a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
people, well, it seems less common for people to request someone be completely honest unless they have a motive for it,
right,
right?
right.
Right.
See, one of the toughest questions is when the person you live with comes up to you and says, "Do you love me?"
That is 100% true.
To which you can say, "You mean right at this moment?"
Right. In the big picture, yes, of course.
In the play The Fiddler on the Roof, the leading actor starts the song "Do You Love Me?" and his wife answers, "Do I what?"
That's right. Yeah. And yeah, he really puts her into a corner. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a loaded question, though, right? For most relationships, that's a loaded question.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I mean is that people are not authentic. They're not coming from a place of what good faith or uh let's be real
Right.
about what we're experiencing and what's occurring for us because we've got this whole God knows how long we've been running these plots about how the things are supposed to be and go and feel and look and all of that. And if they don't fit into all of that, that nice little packaged Walmart uh, romance novel, you know.
Is that where you
Anyway,
shop for your books?
yeah, pretty much Walmart. Yeah, that's my go-to.
Well, you're in Arkansas, where else are you going to go?
That's true. That's true.
So
Although, yeah,
go ahead, Eli. Go ahead.
no, I'm just being silly.
So we're talking about truth at the level of honesty in human relationships and lying and not lying, being authentic in one's speech and that's one strata, right? What about in the parable of Plato's cave? You guys know that story?
No.
Plato, the Greek philosopher it's one of the things that people quote quite often, from him. He told the story of people who were held captive in a cave, chained in such a way where they could only look at the wall in front of them. And behind them, there were people conducting a puppet show, and behind them was a fire that provided the light. And so the people who were chained think that the puppet show they're watching is reality.
Yeah, the shadows on the wall
The shadows on
of
the
the
wall.
puppet show. Yeah.
Right. And so one of them gets loose out of his chains and goes and finds his way out of the cave, sees the situation for what it is, goes out into the sunlight and sees this whole new world. He comes back and tries to tell the others that they are, living in an illusion. And I think they kill him, if I remember the story. Yeah, don't they? Yeah. So let's talk about it in those terms. When we're talking about truth. Truth as opposed to illusion.
Okay, so that's a awesome story. I always worthy of contemplation. We have to be able to reach deeper than the senses and the intellect, and in a sense, in a knowing, right? We have to reach into this unknown in a knowing way and really stretch our awareness or consciousness through all the exercises of spiritual disciplines typically kind of help prep the mind for this sort of experience and listen to a very fine or subtle level of our being that is not apparent in the three-dimensional world as obvious, right? It's a knowing.
Yeah.
We have to live, we have to learn to operate in that world, the realm of pure knowing. And the more we can do that, often the most common bridge is just the imagination, right? But a disciplined imagination. And once one is able to keep their attention, their self-conscious awareness at this state of the unknown knowing, a different type of knowing becomes accessible. And that place, if you want to call it's not a place, but that state of awareness is where we can interact with, as an allegory to the cave, the people who are behind the people in the chains, and the people that are much closer to the great light that is behind.
Mhm.
And if we want to go straight to the light itself, of course, that's that's a possibility,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's just pure mysticism. I mean, that's taking our awareness and reaching mystically into ways that we were not taught, or if we were taught, it was from those deeper levels.
Yeah. Does anyone else have something they'd like to add to that in regards to truth versus illusion?
Well, just to add to that, that the truth evolves as we evolve. The truth evolves with us. It's not that things change; it's that we understand more.
Okay.
I see truth as a continuum. It's not, this is different than this. It's the ultimate guiding truth that created this universe is not separate from people who are doing experiments to find out the truth of a situation or whatever. There's different expressions of it. And people are just as inclined to deny factual facts that they don't like as they are to ignore the idea that there is an ultimate truth, God, whatever you want to call it. I don't see them as separate. I see them as just part of a continuum. And that if you have the one, you're going to have the other. Because if you're really aware and involved with the truth, then you're going to have to carry that all the way down the line, no matter what you're doing.
You know, I can think of a couple of movies, at least two, that talk about this that are very similar in a way to Plato's Cave. You guys know which two I'm thinking of?
The Matrix.
That's one.
I still haven't
Ah.
watched it.
Everything everywhere all at once.
Oh,
That's a
I've
good
heard
one.
about that. I've heard of that. I'll have to watch
That's
that.
a good one.
Great film.
Yeah.
Where do you get that? How can you rent it or?
Yeah. Where did I go? I think I might have went to. It wasn't HBO. I think it was a Star something that I subscribed to just to watch that show for a
Yeah.
month.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
But Michael, if you go on IMDb and look up the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then down on the right, it will show you that where you can watch it.
Oh,
Yeah,
terrific.
Amazon.
Oh, okay.
I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Well, I've got that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
What's
that's
the
a
other
really
one you
cool
were
movie.
thinking of?
I'm thinking of C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what happens there? You know, they discover a wardrobe in a bedroom in their mansion. And when you go into the wardrobe and you swim through all the clothes in it, you come into a world that is bigger than the world you're leaving.
Time Bandits. So
Huh?
Time Bandits, same thing. They go into a Schiffer robe and into another world.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a Terry Gilliam film.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that dovetails with Plato's Cave, don't you think? You know, and like especially the Matrix. The Matrix, everybody's
Oh yeah,
living in a completely false world.
right.
And then when he finds out, what happens when Neo finds out the reality of his situation? Remember that?
Yeah, he almost snaps, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty big. Yeah, pretty overwhelming. And then of course all of the system that is responsible for maintaining the illusion, of course, is now trying to uh basically kill him, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like the guy in Plato's Cave. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we've got the question of enlightenment, and we have this question of truth, and we're looking at truth now in terms of the illusion, right? So if it's like two quotes come to mind. One by Buddha. You know, Buddha pretty much, he kind of blew everybody's mind. You know, everybody that talked to him was just completely taken aback by his wisdom and his presence. And you know, they asked him, "What are you? You know, like, are you a prophet?" And he said, "No, I'm not a prophet." And he said, "Are you a saint?" "No, I'm not a saint." I said, "Well, what are you?" He said, "I am awake." The other quote I'm thinking of is out of the Gospel according to Thomas, where Jesus says that the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it. So if we're starting to, I'm trying to hit these different points like enlightenment and now truth. And what are those two things pointing to? And they're both pointing to a reality that most people are blind to. It's as though they are in the dark, right? So the word enlightened would mean somehow they've come into the light, like the man in Plato's cave. And Neo, he wakes up and finds himself in the quote unquote real world. And in Narnia, you know, in the Chronicles of Narnia, the kids go into a whole new world that exists, it's real, but nobody else knows about it but them. So I'm suggesting that we look at enlightenment as an experience of that which transcends the illusion. You know, one of the things we do in our training is we start off with concentration because if there's anything that gets in the way of our direct perception of the truth, it's our mind, right? Our presuppositions, our assumptions about things, and the way our brain works. Our brain acts more like a filter than anything else. It's a reducing valve. So whatever it is that's real, the brain's primary job is to filter most of it out because it would be overwhelmed if it didn't. We would be overwhelmed. I mean, all we have to, it's not hard to realize that so much of the world that we know exists is invisible to us, right? We don't see electromagnetic waves. We don't see gravity waves. We don't see, we see only that which falls within a very narrow spectrum of resolution, within a range of size. We don't see anything, with our physical senses. We don't see anything that our eyes can't resolve, right? So there's so much more here, and things that affect us all the time, things we use all the time, like, radio waves and microwaves and, radiation. Radiation can affect you drastically, and yet nobody can see it or feel it. We live in an environment of thought where, when we're with other people, like now, we have like these clouds of thought that are around us, and these clouds of thought are trying to relate to each other. And it's a very difficult thing, but we can't see that, right? But it's obviously real. I mean, something real is going on when we communicate, because we deal with it. And we know when we're connecting, if we're at all self-aware, we know when we're connecting, when we're not. So much of the world that we live in is invisible to us. So a person who's enlightened would be a person who can see more of what's real, at least at a certain threshold, right? And the truth would be that it would be the existence of that which is invisible, but is very real, and can be argued that it's more real than the world we live in, because the world we live in is so restricted, it's so throttled down, for the sake of our brain and sake of our, what we need to survive. So the question is, and this is something I've been working on for a while now, and it's starting to make a lot of sense to me, that when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth, but men do not see it, and Buddha said, I'm awake, and we have these stories like the Matrix or the Chronicles of Narnia or the Wizard of Oz or Time Bandits, those kinds of those stories, they all point to something that's much greater than we're aware of at any given time. And I say that world is more immediately accessible to us than we've been led to believe. Because anything that is super special, in terms of philosophy or in terms of spirituality, the more special it is, the bigger and harder to attain it becomes. In the retelling of the story, every time somebody talks about enlightenment, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you talk about, well, who's enlightened? Well, that person just gets higher and higher and higher on a pedestal until you can't even see them anymore, right? But then if you ever met them, you'd think, this guy is supposedly enlightened, or this woman, you wouldn't accept it. It's like they did the same thing to Jesus, right? He went home and nobody, who the hell are you? You're just Joseph's son. You're just a carpenter. What are you trying to, get down off your high horse? But they put him on the high horse, right?
Mhm.
So they project that onto him and say, we're not going to listen to you because we know you. We know who you are. So I think that one of the, the biggest scams going on is that enlightenment and the truth are somehow unattainable, that they're so grand and so big and so esoteric that you can't, it's not in the cards for you to be able to actually experience what those words really mean. And I think that's a lie. And I think Jesus knew it was a lie too, because he said the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Mhm.
And that supposedly was the good news, right? That's what that word gospel means. It means the good news.
Yeah.
So Jesus shows up and says, hey, it's right here. It's right here. How do you find it? You see? So, as it turns out, there are ways to find it. The thing is that you have to disabuse yourself of certain concepts, which means, like, if you were to find enlightenment, if you were to become enlightened, that you would somehow just start, your whole being would just change, in a flash, and you would be glowing with light, and you'd be, in eternal bliss all the time, right? And that's just more of that. Let's make it so big that nobody can reach it. And of course, if you're a spiritual teacher, you want to keep people reaching for something unattainable, because then you can be the one to be in charge, right? You can keep them guessing and keep them following you. So, and as long as you can keep moving the target, you see, then you can get them to follow you forever. So, and that's real, right? I think and Jesus knew it was real too, because he was very, very hard on hypocrites. And he said, you guys, he's talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, said, you guys, you hold the keys to the kingdom, but you neither go in yourself, nor do you let others go in. You see, so this is like a universal constant. This is something we always have to deal with. And you'll find it in other disciplines too, university level. You'll find there'll be professors who the last thing they want is for you to get smarter than they are, because it makes them look bad and they feel threatened by it, right? So we have to be honest with ourselves and not buy into that. Enlightenment is something that you can experience the real. You can experience the real world. And you go in and you come back out. And you go in again and you come back out. And every time you go in, it changes you a little bit. And then you come out and you've had this experience, and then it makes you see the world differently. And it reorganizes your thinking, because you realize that more and more what you see and experience seems to be like a veneer. And this is actually in terms of spiritual initiation, this is like the first initiation. And an initiation is a shift in consciousness. It's where your awareness all of a sudden questions the reality that you have been taking for granted. It's like that the first step on the path of initiation is when you realize, hey, maybe all of this, maybe there's more than what I'm seeing. Maybe there's more to the world than what than I'm dealing with. You see, that's the first step on the road, on the path of initiation. And then once that gets like a splinter in their mind, like Neo, he says, the thing he wanted to know more than anything else was, what is the matrix? You see? So there are ways to do it. And as it turns out, they're not that difficult. They're not that hard to do. You do have to have some control of your thinking, your mind. You have to be able to relax enough and trust enough to where your thoughts slow down and you can open up without fear of something coming in and, and inhabiting you, which is what a lot of people, especially amongst fundamentalists, they say, do not meditate, because you open yourself to demonic possession, So you have to be able to relax. You have to have trust in God. And this is where Paul, he emphasized having faith. Faith and trust and this concept are almost identical. So it's like you have to know that if you point your awareness toward God, that you can open up to that, and then that's all that's going to come in, is more of reality and not more illusion. You see? So relaxation is very important, and relaxing in your mind, right? Really relaxing in your mind to let go of your grip on reality, you see. So you relax in your mind, you orient yourself towards the ultimate, the most high, and you open up to it. And as you do, it starts to reorganize you, and new experiences will happen. You'll start to have inner experiences that will show you what you suspected is true, that the world you are accustomed to, there's something not quite right about it, that there's more. Now, this is what drove the scientific revolution, right? Those guys looked at the world and refused to go along with the word from above, which it was all cloaked in secret theological language. And they decided, no, we're going to find out. We're going to find out for ourselves. And so they started to delve into things, and then things really started to open up, and we're living proof of that now. So this does not just only apply to spirituality. This applies to everything. Everything. So whenever we think we know something, we think we've got a handle on reality, humility dictates that we admit to ourselves, at some point down the road, we're going to discover we're completely wrong about this. And so if you can kind of project yourself into the future and take on that mindset, like go 20 years in the future and then turn around and look at where you're at now and what you believe now, and see if your mind doesn't maybe reveal a few things to you that are completely off, that are completely misconceptions, right? So we've got, you have to be relaxed. You have to be able to relax your mind. And and the more you relax your mind, the quieter your mind gets. The quieter your mind gets, the more control you have over it then, and you can orient your attention in whichever direction you want. And if you direct it up, and I mean that both literally and figuratively or metaphorically, to the highest conception, the highest connection you can form, and then you open up to that, you see, then you start to transform. You start to transform from the inside out. So, any questions about this? Right?
I think what I find with most of, even like moms like me, that we are most of the time in trance because we're doing the job. We are like, we are action, 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 action. And so because we are in that trance, we thought, oh, we are in the real world. We are in truth, and it's all about productivity, trying to get things done, making sure all the dishes are washed. There's not really a huge concept of really trying to get out there because things are getting done on how, the fly lady has put it, Yeah. So even the aspiration, I guess, of seeking the real world, as what you have said, or trying to come out and seek that higher connection sometimes doesn't occur naturally because of those reasons. And I suppose it's the same way with other people who are also in trance, who are working, students or whatever is the case, but what would be the desire for that person to even occur to them that this is not the real world, that there is actually, like you said, there is a that super special thing hasn't probably knocked on them. You know, that the bigger and harder to attain thing is somewhat not to be there to seek, or maybe they wanted it, but it's just underneath everything because, you know, they're producing.
Right, right. And I think that's where love comes in, right? When you're constantly meeting the needs of other people, that becomes the highest truth for you, is because you know that's like there's the physical stuff that's getting done, but then there's the why it's getting done, right? Because you're taking care of people, you're holding together an invisible structure called a family or a household. And so that's like a dimension above the physical stuff, right? And we tend to identify that as love in action. So we take care of people, then that produces a real experience, and that experience is on a level above just moving stuff around, right? So that's when I owned a business for a number of years, and it was a woodworking business, commercial woodworking business. And oftentimes I'd have to stay late and work way into the night for something that had to be done by the next day. And my mind would tell me that it's impossible to get this much work done in this allotted time. So I would pray, and I would relax on the inside, and I would orient my attention towards within, to the highest reality that I could tap into. And I would accept, not even like asking, it's more like, I accept this. I accept that I will get this work done, even though there's not enough time. So what I was attempting to do is to stretch the time, right? I was trying to get more time in it. And so what happened when I would do that, and I did, you know, I was always behind. So I got really in the habit of doing this. And what happened was that I could watch myself then get in the flow, in the zone, to where every action I made was perfectly efficient. I didn't have to redo anything. There was no resistance to what I was doing, and there were no mistakes. Everything just flowed. And most people call that being in the zone, right? You can experience it in many different ways. So what that did for me was that I realized that there was another reality working through me to change this reality, because it was making something possible that before was impossible. So that's that's how I used it. But this might be an answer to your question, Marianne, because it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, that's why so many people, especially practical people and people who are living up to huge responsibilities in their life, they have no patience whatsoever for new agey, metaphysical spirituality nonsense, which is how they see it, because it has no practical application in their lives. So, but I know that it has enormous applications in life. But you have to work with it in that way, you know. It's like being here, there is something hugely advantageous about being in this world, even as much of an illusion. See, here's the problem with that word illusion. It may be an illusion, but that does not mean it's not real. You see, this world is real. It's just limited. And our perception has been throttled down, reduced down to deal with this world. So we tend to dismiss anything else because we don't know how to use what's available in these higher worlds to get stuff done here. You see? It's a huge opportunity. So a person who can do that then would be like a bridge between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of this world. You see, be like a mediator. You're like in the Indians, they said those who walk between two worlds, between the worlds. And that's one thing that, you know, the path of initiation and the spiritual path is learning how to do that. It's learning how to walk between the worlds, because the world I'm talking about is very real, and it's more real than this one. But when we learn how to link the two together, then we're able to do things in this world that, you know, some people might even call miraculous. You know, little miracles, big miracles, doesn't matter. If it's unexplainable, or if it's the impossible made possible, that's almost by definition a miracle. So there are ways to work with the kingdom of heaven, which is here, spread all around, but we don't see it. You know, it's like a dimension that's right here, interlaced with this one, but we just don't see it. But the more we work with it, the more visible it becomes. And by visible, I don't necessarily mean, you know, seeing it with your eyes or even in your imagination necessarily. But if you experience it, if you experience the movement of energy through you, that's proof. And then if you see things altered or expedited or transformed as a result of you doing that, that is even greater proof that what you're picking up on is more real than what you're accustomed to. Right? So these are the things that usually when you talk to people about enlightenment, it's just a head trip. You know, it's just it's a clever puzzle that they like to talk about and to be right about and to argue about, you know, because, you know, it's a particular branch of philosophy, and what better thing to argue about than something you can't prove. And the only reason you can't prove it is because you don't do it. You know, nobody actually puts it to work, right? They don't walk the talk. So, and if you suggest that to them, they just get mad at you, right? So this is a lot. Maybe we can continue this next time and go into it further. There are techniques that I've been working on a meditation method that will help you get into that zone ridiculously simply. It's ridiculously simple. So we can talk about that. And just to leave you with something to kind of think about until then, we live in the world of 3 dimensions. So what we're talking about is 4th dimension. And the way we access the 3, you know, what are the 3 dimensions? It's like you've got, let's see if I can illustrate this. You've got the vertical, you've got the horizontal, and then you've got the forward and back, front and back. You see, that's like the 3-dimensional world that we live in. So how do you think we access the 4th dimension, or the reality that cannot be accessed in the three-dimensional world. How do you think we get there? We go in. We go in. This
Oh.
way, this way. Till we get to the zero dimension. You see? You collapse the three dimensions to the 0 point. That becomes a portal. That's the wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia. That's the point where you enter in, and the space you emerge in is larger than the world that you leave. Okay? So meditate on this. It's a very simple diagram. You know, you've got up and down, you got side to side, front and back. That's the three-dimensional world. It's the X, Y, Z axes. To get to the fourth dimension, you go in. Okay, and you can do that. You do that in your consciousness, do it in your mind, in your imagination. And the more you do it, the more you can feel it as an experiential reality. Okay, that's your homework.
Thank you, Michael.
You bet. All right. So thanks for being here, you guys. As always,
Thank
it's
you,
a
Michael.
You're welcome.
I'm going to be announcing I'm going to start teaching more classes, and I'm going to be doing a daytime class, but I haven't figured out which day yet. So, because I've got people in the UK and South Africa and India and other places that can't attend these classes because for them it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So,
Mm.
so I'll be announcing. And are all of you getting my spirit briefings?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're great.
Okay, good. And
They're really good.
oh, good, great. I have a great time writing them. I tell you, those are my meditations. So, so I will be announcing, you know, a new class and anything else that comes down the road. So, stay tuned.
Thanks,
All right.
Mike.
Thank you.
All righty, take care.
Send you an email, Eli. Nice to meet you, Marianne. Nice to meet you,
As
Lila.
well.
All right. It's good to see you all. It's nice to meet you, Marianne.
Nice meeting you. Hope you come back.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.